I'm Matt Burman. I'm Artistic Director and Chief Exec of Cambridge Junction. I'm joined by Katrina Nash and Sarah Strachan, who are artists currently studying here at ARU. We'll be talking about the next 10 years and what conditions we might need to put in place between now and then so that people like Katrina and Sarah can achieve their full potential. It's obviously quite a big subject for three people, and this is quite, I would say, quite a partial conversation, and it's a conversation. I mean, partial in that you'll only hear part of it, and also that we're not impartial. So I suppose to kick off, Katrina, what do you think the biggest challenges are, and what do you think we need to be looking at in terms of opportunity?
Well, hello. And for me, I think the fact that I'm going to be graduating soon, I want to make sure that I've got a place where I can go, still within Cambridge, that gives me stability as an artist and respects me as an artist, not just a graduated art student, also with a sense of community as well.
And how do you think we can build that community differently in Cambridge?
I'm hoping that, even though we have Wising and we have Cadwell's Yard and Fitzwilliam, I'm hoping that more advertisement and kind of encouraging graduates and even people that might not be able to go to uni, just to kind of involve themselves within art. I'm hoping that I'm hoping Junction will be able to do something. We have such an amazing music scene in Cambridge. I come from Norwich, so I'm covered in graffiti and a whole load of like paintbrushes from early age. But yeah, if we had more of an art scene here as well, as much as we do a music scene, I think that would be great.
It's been interesting that we've been talking about why that might be, why there might be more artist-led spaces in places like Norwich, and obviously there is a post-industrial architecture in those places, or in places like Leeds or Manchester, which allows artists to take occupation of those spaces, which leads to a different sense of community and a different sense of activity around those things. We can't trick that. It's harder to trick that in a place like Cambridge where we don't have that without significant investment. I know anecdotally that one of the things that comes up in Cannes very regularly is that artists are looking for studio space. I imagine people will love it. So if that's clearly an ongoing problem, we need to look at where that capacity might be found. And we hope that maybe as part of the future development of the Junction, we might be able to find artist studio space in that, but that is some years down the line and some fundraising down the line. Sarah, you talked about employment opportunities and about capacity and about how we sort of might look at that transition, I suppose, between education and professional. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were talking about the kind of pressures on students now, particularly because a lot of students are in employment at the same time as studying, and that puts pressure in terms of voluntary positions. So paid opportunities are kind of few and far between in a work experience or sort of placement capacity. So I think we were just talking about whether or not there were opportunities to sort of look at it almost like a job share, where students could perhaps help out organisations by providing on an ongoing sort of part-time employment place where they get work experience, but they then give the organisation the capacity to maybe allow people to work more flexibly or for training and that kind of thing.
It was interesting that I wanted to disagree more. I wanted us to argue about this, but it was quite hard because there were lots of good ideas, and I just want to say yes, I think that's a great idea. But I think how we put together an organisation's or a cultural organisation's need for capacity with a a person's need for experience is something really interesting, so that we ensure that it's not on a sort of free, unpaid internship basis, because obviously there are significant barriers to people who need to earn money to actually live, to engage with those opportunities. So we need to look at a living wage minimum on those opportunities, and we need to look at obviously funding for that, but look at how we can connect to where an organisation might need somebody to come in and work, as you say, to allow more flexible working, or to work on a specific project with those people who need experience. And I think with the number of cultural organisations that we have in the city, we should be able to look at that. And I think there's also something intended on both cultural organisations and higher education institutions to look at how together we give each other that capacity to support people in that transition between education and training and professional experience. You talked a bit about community. How might we build work?
I was just going to add that this year, that is the first year that fine art students in Anglia, Ruskin, can do a 3-week placement as part of their degree, and that's going to take some support from the creative industries to enable that kind of conversation to start, because the onus is very much on students to make that happen. So, yeah.
Can I just add something to that as well? So I have friends in other courses within the art school, and when we were doing our dissertations, most of them were able to go into a work placement and fine art, apart from your year, we weren't given the choice. And not only would this help like me as an artist, because that's what I'm going to be, and I need to know what to do after this, so a 3-year work placement would be beautiful, but I feel like it also would have helped my dissertation, knowing what I was writing about, having a little bit more knowledge, so something like that would help so much.
Yeah. So it's a practical experience and experience of other opportunities within your field to earn money to support your work, essentially. I mean, I think that's the reality of a professional artist's life in most art forms is that they will have to have a portfolio career where they might perform and they might teach, or they might make and they might teach, and they might do other work in order to support their making. We talked a bit about community. How do you think we can build those communities?
I'm hoping, like we have the science festivals or film festivals each year, that we kind of have a festival like that, where it just brings all the beautiful things that we already have, like the Fits, like Circuit, Wising, Kells Yard, little tiny Gallery 9 that we have somewhere in Cambridge, kind of all together, but it also brings it into the public domain of Cambridge. So that does bring the public and people that might have no idea and no interest to start with within the art world, and just kind of kickstart like hopefully an annual thing that can build and grow, and then we'll be able to like work with professional artists and kind of get experience with that as well.
We also talked about if we can create the conditions in which artist-led initiatives can develop, then for instance, if you have a studio complex, one of the ways that artists who are getting subsidised or free studio space can give back to that community is by supporting workshops for other people who are entering that area of work or area of practice, and through that you can build your community more widely and make it more inclusive, I suppose. There was something else that you said that I can't remember now.
So I guess it leads on from inclusivity, and that's that I think we talked about if the Junction was able to support artists, because at the moment visual artists aren't particularly supported, but I think that lots of things sort of happen in silos or in particular funding streams, and that might not be how artists kind of work. So being kind of multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary, and thinking about that without any kind of barriers in terms of diversity and age as kind of thing. So I think that a lot of focus is on different parts of artists' careers, but there is a little bit of a focus on the beginning and the end. So we're particularly interesting when we're emerging, and we're particularly interesting in our end of career, preferably when we're dead. So it would be my vision for the next 10 years would be that there's support and that there is encouragement for artists at all parts of their career rather than just the really interesting bits.
I think that's really vital. I think it's very interesting having this conversation, realising the differences between the performing arts and music and the visual arts, and seeing how much of the visual arts sector is predicated by the market, and how it's galleries don't seem to have talent development programs, which I find really interesting. We are supported by the Arts Council to develop artists at the Junction, and I find it interesting that the similar structures don't exist in the visual arts, and that's not a criticism. But I think it's very much the case that we want to be more interdisciplinary at Cambridge Junction. We want to be a home for a much wider range of practice, not only performing arts and music, but the creative uses of technology, for instance. And we could include visual arts in that if we increase our remit. We would have to get the nod from City Council and the Arts Council, and would have to tell us that was all right. We'd have to talk to our partners at Cadwell's Yard and Wysing, and everybody would have to play nicely. But I think that would be really interesting. I think that sense of interdisciplinarity needs to come with a non-hierarchical approach as well. I think it's very interesting that we've been able to have a very equal conversation, I think. And I think we should find lots of ways to continue those conversations to the betterment of the wider artistic community in Cambridge. What time is it? I've got time. We're good. So I suppose I've got four things which I've finished with, and I'll maybe allow a little bit of time for questions. Have either of you got anything you want to add before I do that little sort of summation? So I think, how can we build stronger communities, and through that sense of the collective working together to promote the importance of the arts, culture and creativity in Cambridge, and to be and to support the growth of new communities and engagement and connection and enriching of the communities which we feel are hardly reached. I mean, how can we ensure that there are opportunities for artists at all stages of their careers, and that we remove as many barriers for people to realise their potential as possible? Those barriers being largely about space, time and money, obviously. How can the arts and cultural organisations work with schools and universities and colleges to better support the transition between education, training, employment and the profession? And how can we work to maintain conversations and dialogue that allow for disagreement and creative friction to lead towards more radical and innovative solutions, and ensure space is made for artists and communities to take and retain agency? So I think those are the things that I think we need to ensure over the next 10 years, so that we all realise the potential. We hope that we will have a new building of some sort in 10 years' time, maybe before 10 years' time, and we hope that there will be more capacity in that to make work for communities to come together, to occupy our spaces in different ways. We're very interested in that quality of disruption and of people lingering with us more at the moment. So please continue to challenge us. Does anybody have any questions before I reach my time limits? Yes?
Yeah, just following over what you were saying about collaboration, I'm wondering if an idea of having a cooperative of young artists and forming your own cooperative, so you're working for each other to actually gain a space, because that way you could actually find funding and link into these guys who could actually help you develop that.
Definitely, and I think that would also help us, even though we already have a sense of community, if you're in a class with like artists your own age and stuff, but it would also help us understand how we can bring that kind of collaboration in the future working with other artists. So yeah, definitely.
Hi, I have a question. One thing is that it's hard to come out as a fine art student and into the workspace, but do you think that says more about the society or the school's way of teaching you?
So I can comment on society. society, definitely, and that's on the basis that I am in my mid-years, but at the beginning of my art career, and that is a recognition, I would say, of I didn't feel that I could get a proper job with an art degree. And so I went and did a science degree. If somebody had had a conversation with me when I was 18 years old and told me that we work a really long time and that actually what you start out as a career doesn't have to be what you end up with, and that you and everybody in the workplace are going to have to get more agile at changing career and being more kind of transferable in terms of the skills they acquire, then I think I would have been a lot more comfortable with the decision that I made. I felt like I had two choices. I could be an artist or I could be a scientist, and I couldn't be the two together. So that's society. I think from a school point of view, I'm in university for the second time, and it's very different. And employability is a much bigger thing this time round than it was last time round. I was left to it. And so I think that is a difference. And I think there is a dialogue all the way through, certainly my 2 years I've been here, about what happens at the end and equipping you with the skills to be in the real world. But that's talk, and you kind of need that practically. So I'll hand to Katrina to tell you about that.
I also think it's up to the individual. For example, I'm the fine art ambassador within my course, and I've been doing that for 2 years now. And through that, I entered into this lovely little event as well. So that all looks wonderful on my CV. And so it is about the individual, and throughout these 3 years, I've been given many chances to collaborate with other students in like photography and film and all that. And we have the employability talks, we had one last week. So the art school do as much as they can, but it's always about the individual and putting yourself out there and just trying as best you can, like anyone.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I'm not going to talk specifically about this school, but if you imagine in classical music, say there are five main conservatoires in the country. Each of those is training the equivalent of a chamber orchestra each year. There aren't that many chamber orchestras in this country. Where are all those musicians going to go? The same with dance schools. 20 years ago there were probably 2 places to go and train in contemporary dance in Europe, and now pretty much every town has a dance course of some sort. So we're training more people than the market can sustain. So we need to look at how we. I trained as a musician. Nobody told me I was going to be an artistic director of a multi-art film venue in 20 years' time. Thank God. I would have done something completely different, and I would have got here. So anyway, we do need to be talking about all the opportunities, and I think thinking about this work experience opportunity that we could give to people in the city, where people looking for experience of things potentially outside their art form or outside of their experience. There was an interesting point that Katrina made yesterday. If we were paying people, think of the pressure that we are putting people under if we are paying them. And I think that's very interesting, because actually we're paying people to learn, which is actually what we should be doing rather than paying somebody else to teach us. We should be paying people to learn their role. That's very different in Europe, where we went somewhere, Claire and I went somewhere recently where they said there's no learning on this job, I pay people to be professional. They were like, really? No. But actually we know that there's a lot of learning that has to happen in organisations about administration, about strategy, about things that you can only really learn once you're actually in an organisation doing the job. You can't really learn that while you're at university. So I think it's a bit of both. It's a bit of society and it's a bit of school.
I'm really interested to hear what your vision of those jobs that you're talking to us about might be. Matt mentioned very briefly about portfolio careers, and I'm sure plenty of people in the room know about that a little bit and how those are juggled. But the reason I'm asking is because in the creative field, you make your job. Very, very much so. So I want to sort of encourage you to think about what that might look for you guys, and how much of that you're going to make happen, and how much of that are you going to expect from an employer, if you know what I mean.
I think it's always up to the individual. So for me, I'm ideally going to say I would love to just be an artist. I know it's not going to be that simple, and I'm going to have to continue to jump through many hoops. But I do feel like, especially being the age I am, I'm still going to need to have not my hand held, but I'm still going to need a little bit of guidance, because I'll be doing everything for the first time until like 10 years down the line. Hopefully I'll have a little bit more experience with everything. But it's like starting any new job that you've never done before. You need kind of some type of training and to learn some type of stuff.
I think that we had a talk last week, for instance, which was all about self-employment, and I think that that is very much what I see as my future, is that I have worked for lots of organisations and lots of corporate businesses over the last 25 years, and so actually I find that opportunity quite enlightening, because I feel a little bit more control in it. I think that the majority of organisations are invested in making you better at what you do that is the business of the organisation, and so there isn't a huge amount of choice then in terms of your kind of career development. I think it kind of gets channeled for you in a way. If you're good at what you do, you get paid more and you get more responsibility, more management, less of what you do or what you enjoy maybe on a day-to-day basis. So I think self-employment has a real kind of attraction to it in terms of control.
I think it's a really interesting one. I still find the whole thing around employability and skills development and things like that around being an artist really complicated. I think when I wanted to be an artist and a musician, I wanted to not think about being employed and all that. I just wanted to play. And I think people want to make up. Actually, that's what we want to do. And so I think actually it is for organisations sometimes to think of how we create the structures and the space and the time and find the resource and the money to allow artists just to get on with making art. So the more we can do that, the more we can have richer, creative, artistic communities, I think, and help people not to have to worry about the self-employment bit. I think we're just about at time. I'm just going to do a shameless plug, I'm afraid. A couple of us are doing the half marathon, Cambridge Half Marathon on Sunday. I am, and Sarah is, and Jane is over there as well. Anybody else doing the half marathon? Excellent. I'm doing it to raise money for the Junction. So if you fancy going here some cash, we're raising some money for our funded ticket scheme, which supports pays for tickets for young people who would not otherwise be able to attend a show at the Junction. We're looking to raise £5,000. We've raised about 3.5 now, including our quiz night, which was a massive success. Do quiz nights if you're trying to raise money. £1,500 in one night. It's amazing. Yeah, bring us some money. Run the Junction. Search for us on Just Giving. Run the Junction. And the winning fundraiser, who at the moment is our popular culture manager Rob, gets to run the Junction for a day. And if anybody beats me on the road, they get to run the Junction. Thank you all very much. Thank you to our scribes. You've been doing an excellent job over there. Thanks for the mind maps. I don't know where you're all going now, but have a good afternoon. Thank you.